Whether it's gaming, movies, books, or comics, a good cliffhanger can be awesome, providing we get the payoff next time around. Gamers, perhaps more than any other consumers of fiction, know this all too well. Whether it's due to our inherent completionist achievement-hunting natures, or simply our love for the characters and storylines we spend hundreds of hours cultivating, it is beyond frustrating when games leave things unresolved. You finally defeat that last boss by the skin of your teeth, saving the world and completing the game in the process. Then you see it. To be continued. But the sequel never comes, and you'll never know what happens next. Now, there can of course be many perfectly legitimate reasons why these plot lines are never resolved. Studios can close, licenses can expire, and games can simply fail to shift enough copies to ensure a sequel gets the green light. It still sucks when it happens though. With all that in mind, I'm Will for WhatCulture, and here are 10 unresolved video game stories that need answers. Number 10. Game of Thrones, the Telltale series, the rise and fall of House Forrester. Whether it's Ned Stark, Renly Baratheon, or Telltale Games, all men must die. With the sad closure of the aforementioned studio, planned installments of various properties were inevitably cancelled, their unfulfilled plots destined to remain so. One of the most galling of such cancelled projects was the scheduled sequel to the Game of Thrones series. The first game was excellent, Thrones through and through, not unexpected given TT's stellar work on the Walking Dead franchise. From the shocking and gruesome murder of young Ethan Forrester at the hands of Ramsay Bolton, to the horrendous choice faced by Mia Forrester at the game's conclusion, this is a tale full of twists, turns, shocks, and surprises. As with the A Song of Ice and Fire books upon which the game was based, waiting with bated breath for the next chapter and the answers to burning questions is just a part of being in the Game of Thrones fandom. Hopefully LCG Entertainment, who have now acquired the licenses to many of TT's former flagship properties, will choose to resurrect the Game of Thrones license and conclude the story of House Forrester. 9. Prince of Persia, Ahriman's Darkness. With acrobatics, wall running, combat, and puzzle solving aplenty, Ubisoft's 2008 Prince of Persia was a bold new installment, a reboot of sorts for this famous franchise, introducing open-world gameplay and a Legend of Zelda-esque plot. An ancient evil, the god Ahriman, imprisoned for 1,000 years, is about to break loose, and those charged with ensuring this being's continued incarceration are fleeing the land, devoid of their former power. Fighting to keep Ahriman and his dark forces at bay, the player must traverse the unspecific and generic Persian lands, mastering combat and completing objectives which will stymie the encroaching evil. However, upon defeating the Morning King, the prince's companion dies. Choosing to resurrect his friend over sealing away Ahriman, the prince unleashes darkness on the world and leaves the evil god at liberty to pursue his dastardly ends. This bleak Empire Strikes Back style ending usually sets the scene for a follow-up in which the good guys win and it's all put right. However, with Ubisoft shifting their focus to Assassin's Creed not long after, a follow-up never materialized. 8. BIONIC Commando. BIONIC Commando is a weird game. Billed as a de facto sequel/reboot of the NES original, this 2009 entry went for a more modern third-person action genre, which was well and truly in vogue throughout the Xbox 360 PS3 era. Betrayed by his former partner, Super Joe, Rad Spencer must take the fight back to his erstwhile ally and his entire Vulture army. However, after defeating his old buddy, Spencer falls from the sky to his apparent death. Following this melancholy scene, we're treated to a cryptic exchange in Morse code between a mysterious sniper and an even more mysterious mystery person. This exchange hints at a deeper, more pervasive plot, with darker forces at work behind the scenes than merely Super Joe. Having only sold around 40,000 copies during its first month despite mostly positive reviews and its lifetime sales poor overall, it is extremely unlikely that we'll ever get to find out what really happened to Nathan Rad Spencer, or learn who exactly this shady mystery organization were. 7. Alan Wake. When Remedy's Alan Wake launched for the Xbox 360 and Windows in 2010, it was intended to be the first entry in a series, telling the tale of the titular hero, and by the way, we need more heroes called Alan, I say more heroes called Alan. The game was a supernatural thriller. Episodic in nature, Alan Wake intentionally hammed up the tune-in next time trope, with each character concluding in a salacious revelation or leaving us with a shocking, unanswered question. At the game's conclusion, via various convoluted machinations which I simply don't have the time to cover here, Alan finds himself stranded in the Dark Place, an alternate dimension akin to Superman's Phantom Zone in many ways. Though DLC was released for Alan Wake which picked up the events of the main story, it played out within this Dark Place, so did not resolve the huge, glaring to-be-continued ending of the main story. A planned sequel was ultimately scrapped, though the developer has publicly stated his interest in picking up Alan's story should the conditions allow for it. 6. The Conduit 2. High Voltage's The Conduit games for the Wii are incredibly ambitious without necessarily having the goods to back up their boasts. Still, both the debut entry and its sequel, the mind-blowingly titled Conduit 2, are motion-controlled first-person sci-fi shooters which were relatively well received by fans and critics alike. It's the conclusion of the second game, though, which justifies the series' place on this list. The player has spent hours fighting off alien forces and ultimately saving the world from this extraterrestrial threat, when, lo and behold, a new alien invasion rears its ugly head. Suddenly, however, a portal randomly appears, and out step George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. Of course, who else, to aid in the fight back. It is utter madness. Given the lackluster performance and mediocre reception of the two existing titles, High Voltage appear to have no plans to put out a third installment, meaning we'll never see the end of the story, nor will we get that Barack Obama DLC. 5. VIEWTIFUL Joe 2. 2003's VIEWTIFUL Joe did something few games manage to achieve these days. It was original. Ostensibly a side-scrolling beat-em-up, it was VIEWTIFUL Joe's cel-shaded graphics, time-manipulating gameplay, and reverence for ostentatious action movies which set it apart from other, more famous titles in the genre. Having saved his girlfriend from the evil clutches of Jado in the debut title, a sequel inevitably followed for Film Nut Joe. Picking up immediately where the first game left off, Joe and his girlfriend Sylvia were informed by Joe's mentor Captain Blue that, despite their previous world-saving exploits, the world will be threatened twice more, literally spelling out plans for a trilogy. Upon defeating the nefarious forces of Ghetto and their leader the Black Emperor via the series' staple frantic, colourful combat, a mysterious, ominous castle randomly appears on the horizon, the final threat prophesied by Captain Blue. Learning that the answers Joe seeks are inside said castle, not to mention a new enemy more powerful than any they've yet faced, Joe and Sylvia set off to tackle this otherworldly threat, and that's where the story was left. The closure of Clover's studio in 2007 and subsequent mothballing of all their IPs leaves Joe's tale frustratingly unfulfilled. 4. Sly Cooper, Thieves in Time. Unlikely Sony mascot Sly Cooper, a raccoon master thief, has starred in an impressive number of titles despite being much less recognizable to the general public than the likes of Mario, Sonic, Crash, or Spyro. In the 2013 release, Thieves in Time, we saw the titular character and his gang of merry animal friends set out on a time-traveling quest to discover who was responsible for damaging the Cooper family history. Sneaking his way across both historic and prehistoric locations, Sly ultimately defeats the villain of the piece, the black market arms dealer Le Paradox. The villains are apprehended and his friends saved, but Sly himself is missing, having been aboard a blimp which crash-landed during the struggle with Le Paradox. Devastated by this apparent loss, his friends promised to find him, in a sequel, presumably. A secret ending revealed that Sly had been transported to ancient Egypt, but with the developers moving on to other projects, including the infamous series, there are currently no plans to revisit Sly and finish this story properly. 3. Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood. Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood was a huge departure from the tried and tested Sonic formula, and a welcome one at that. Eschewing the left-to-right gotta-go-fast gameplay of Sonic games gone by, Dark Brotherhood opted instead for isometric traversal of a colourful overworld, punctuated by bouts of turn-based combat based on traditional RPGs. Developed by industry giants BioWare, this RPG for the Nintendo DS focused on the story of Knuckles' kidnap and the disappearance of the Chaos Emeralds. Inexplicably turning up with the allegedly reformed Dr. Eggman Robotnik, Sonic and friends must travel to an alternate dimension in a ship named the Cyclone to put an end to the villainous marauders. Upon succeeding in their heroic endeavors, the team are, shockingly, betrayed by Robotnik, who shoots the Cyclone out of the sky, condemning the team and Sonic to their apparent fiery deaths. The game would prompt the player with a message reading "The End?" upon completion, but with a planned sequel being scrapped long ago, the answer is, sadly, a resounding yes. 2. Batman Arkham Origins. The main storyline was indeed neatly concluded at the end of the criminally underrated Arkham Origins, and with the game serving as a prequel to the original Arkham games, Batman's story does continue in earnest. There was, however, a huge teaser dropped at Origins' conclusion which will sadly never come to fruition, or so it seems at this point. Defeated by the Bat and now languishing in Blackgate, Slade Deathstroke Wilson is visited by Amanda Waller and offered the chance to form Task Force X, the alternative being to simply rot in his cell if he refuses to sign. Warner Bros. Montreal were actually working on a Suicide Squad game at one point, and we have since seen some impressive concept art to back this up. As with a number of DC properties, if the rumors are to be believed, the Suicide Squad game was ultimately cancelled, much to the chagrin of Task Force X fans everywhere. There's no word on whether a different iteration of this nebulous title will ever see the light of day, and we still don't know with any certainty what the next Batman game is going to be. It is highly unlikely, however, to follow up on this enticing teaser. 1. Star Wars Republic Commando. The early to mid-noughties were a formative time for Star Wars games, with everything from Clone Wars and Bounty Hunter to Jedi Starfighter and Jedi Outcast, and of course, Super Bombad Racing. One such title, which seemed to fly at ARC 170 under the radar, was Republic Commando. A tactical first-person shooter we pick up with Delta Squad at the Battle of Geonosis. Over the course of the ensuing Clone Wars, Delta Squad is dispatched to a variety of battlefronts, facing battle droids, mercenaries, and even the commander of the droid forces himself, General Grievous. Tragedy, however, strikes their final mission. Under heavy fire, Sev is cut off from the rest of the squad and unable to evacuate Kashyyyk. Conditioned to follow orders without question, Boss, Fixer, and Scorch must leave their brother behind to his presumed death. The developers have since spoken of their potential ideas for a sequel, including resuming the now 3-man Delta Squad story as they execute Order 66, or revisiting the surviving Sev, now a member of the new Rebel Alliance. With Republic Commando no longer considered canon and Star Wars gaming firmly in the hands of Disney and EA, we will sadly never know what might have been. And would you look at that, folks? 10 unresolved video game stories that need answers. Feel free to drop this video a like if you enjoyed it, and drop me a follow on Twitter at YouSlyDogU. I'm Will for WhatCulture, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.